Hey guys, Phil Harris here. In today's video, I'm going to give you a run through of how I made my Ed Sheeran remix. It's for his new track, Bad Habits. A ton of you will have already listened to it, a load of you downloaded it, so I thought I'd just give you a quick run through of exactly how I made it. Now, just before I actually get into this, I also wanted to announce that at the moment I'm currently on the lookout for 6 DJs and producers to work with them closely over the next 12 months to teach them everything they need to know about making awesome remixes, mashups, even originals like this, and teach them everything they need to know in order to actually grow a fan base off the music they're making. And because as a DJ, this is the weird thing, right? The thing is, even though I'm teaching a lot of people how to DJ online, the thing that I know is true is if you really want to make it big as a DJ, the sad reality is you're probably not just going to get there by DJing. In order to kind of make it into the big leagues, the festivals, the huge clubs, the touring DJs are actually guys who make their own dance music. A ton of you will probably already know this, but just in case some of you hadn't worked that out, that is the case. So if you're actually interested in growing a fan base and getting to a point where you're playing the festival circuits and stuff like that, you need to learn how to do some of this stuff here that I'm going to be showing you today. And the other thing I'll tell you as well is if you like DJing, you're going to love making music because it's completely addictive. So even if you're right at the beginning of your journey and this is something you're interested in, I'd love to actually speak to you and see if you're good for this mentorship program. So in order to get in touch with me, all you got to do is grab your phone, go and send me a message on Instagram and just say the word main stage, okay? Just so I know you're interested, I can get into a conversation with you and see if you'd be a good fit. A couple of you are thinking, I don't have Instagram. Well, if you ever want to become a big, famous DJ, you're going to have Instagram. So go and download Instagram and send me the word main stage. I'd like to speak to you. Now, on that note, let's get straight into actually how I did this song. Now, bear in mind, a load of you may not have ever produced before, and this is going to seem kind of complicated, but bear with me, because I think you're going to see some cool stuff, and it might kind of demystify how music production is made. Now, I'm not going to be explaining this for complete beginners. I'm going to be explaining this for kind of intermediate people, so bear with me, and I'm going to show you some cool stuff. So, let's finally get actually into it. So, okay, so first thing I started with was the drop. For me, when I'm listening to music, I always go straight to the drop to see if I like the drop, and then I'll make a decision on whether I like the rest of the song, right? That's sad, but that's true. So I was like, right, I've got to get this drop right first. And my idea for the drop was to have the melody actually play the same melody that Ed Sheeran is singing. So when he kind of goes, I think I lose control of the things that I say, I wanted the melody to go da 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 da, right? It's following what he's already singing. It's nothing hugely original this, but that was my thought process. The second thing is, if you listen to the original of Ed Sheeran's track, let me come down to here and find it for you quickly, which is here. You'll notice one of the coolest things about this track is it's got this offbeat bass, right? It's like kick, and then the bass happens between the kick, and then the bass comes back, so it's going dick-dum, dick-dum, dick-dum. I hear a lot of this in kind of Melbourne bounce music. I'm going to play you a super quick example. Have a listen. Let's go to the actual bit where it kind of drops. My bad habits lead to late nights sitting alone. Right, dick-dum, 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 dick-dum. Have a listen. Late nights sitting alone. So I knew I was going to follow a very similar thing. So the first thing I did was I put down a kick, which just happened on every kind of quarter note. And I worked out a bass line that went between every note, and it was just basically following the chord progression of the original song. So it sounded like this, originally. Oh, get the lane then, Phil. Ready? Right, now what you'll notice is I've kind of messed around with it a little bit. So instead of just all the notes being on the half note, I've moved a couple of them around. So instead of being this, what I've done is I budged some of the notes back a little bit and added 3 notes here. It creates a bit more of a bounce, a bit more swing. Right, so that was the first thing I did. Have my offbeat bass, notes following the chords, blah, blah, blah. Next thing I wanted to do is get in the melody, right? So I went and picked just one sound to start with so I could draw it in. I knew what key the song was in, so I kind of painstakingly actually drew this melody in. The worst bit for me, but this is what it sounded like. Right, right? It's got that, it's following the melody of him singing. Now, I purposely got a sound that kind of had portamento on it, which meant the notes glided. So instead of going da, 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 it goes da, 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 right, the notes are kind of joined, right? Okay, and you can see I've layered notes here, so it kind of drags the sound up. Listen to this note. Okay, so that was the next thing, and now I wanted, just putting those elements together sounded like this. Let me just turn this off down here. So those elements, just the kick, the bass, and the lead sounded like this. Right, which was okay, but it just didn't sound big enough. So I added another lead sound on top of it. I've got a rule when it comes to this. You don't want to have hundreds of lead sounds. You see some producers online, they've got like 25 lead sounds stacked on top of each other. I have a golden rule of 2, and if you really have to, 3, and that's it, absolute max. So I listened to this sound. Sounded good, it was kind of like dead down the middle, it sounded kind of like aggressive, but I realized I needed this sound to sound wider, okay? So I went and got basically a super saw sound, which is just multiple voices spread out. They're called super saws. It sounds a bit more like this. You see that? That sound there is spread out, but it's not, it hasn't got any kind of central sound to it. So you put them together, instead of this, you get this. Cool. So that's how I created the sound. They're basically doing the same thing, okay? Now the next thing you need to know about is with this track, it's kind of got this offbeat bass, which means it goes kick, bass, dig-gung, dig-gung. And now I also wanted to make sure that the melody was doing something similar. When the kick hit, the melody dropped in volume and then came back up. This is called side chaining, okay? So just to kind of give you a bit of an idea of what's going on here, and don't worry if you don't recognize these plugins, but you see this line? Essentially, this is automating the volume every time the kick hits to drop and come back up. And it happens over a long time period. So if I was to turn this off, let me just quickly check where the routing of this is, avoid kick. Okay, so have a listen to this, okay? I'm going to turn the sidechain off, and you're going to hear that lead sound is a lot more kind of static. It's just always there. Which means if I played that with the kick, the lead is playing at the same time as the kick. Listen. Which is kind of messy, because when the kick hits, you don't want anything sitting on top of it. So I put this sidechain effect on. It causes it to drop and then come back up. So have a listen to it with and without. This is without. This is with. And let me take the kick off so you can really hear it. It's subtle, that's what's going on, and it's adding quite a lot, okay? So, at this point, I've got the kick, I've got the bass, and I've got my lead sorted, okay? This was my first thing I did, so it sounded like this. Now, the next thing which I want to tell you about, which is really awesome, is at the beginning of the drop, I add white noise. This is a very common thing that happens, and you've got to think, as producers, we can really start to put in these psychoacoustic effects. What I mean by this is we're actually tricking the audience into thinking there's more going on than there actually is. A lot of producers at the moment of the drop actually put in sound effects of crowds cheering, but really quietly in the mix. What this does is when you listen to a drop, you hear these people screaming and, you know, going crazy in the background. It tricks your brain into thinking, oh my gosh, it's just going crazy, right? Even if you listen to it in a field, if there's a subtle sound of people going crazy, you think everyone around you is going crazy just because it's actually quiet in the mix, and then it kind of builds energy. So what I do is I also go and put in some white noise. If you think about when you go to see festivals, often when the drop hits, there's like these CO2 canisters that go, you know, they spray this smoke out into the crowd. I put this sound in because it kind of replicates that. We're tricking people into thinking it's kicking off. So the white noise sound is just this, right? In the mix, sounds like this. Right, so have a listen to it with and without, okay? So this is without the white noise. This is with the white noise. It's subtle, but it creates this kind of effect, right? It's really cool. The other thing is, for all of you who couldn't hear that sidechaining effect, you'll definitely hear it on this. Listen. It's got that sidechain. Every time the kick hits, it drops and it comes back up. And the other top tip for you is, you don't have to have these long white noise sounds. Just put it there for like 3 beats and just take it away. It does its job and then it's gone. You don't need to have this long tail off on it. Just and it's gone. Ready? Listen. Cool. Right. So that's pretty much the drop. Now, the other thing, I'm going to kind of go into a bit more depth on this because I imagine the people who don't care have already left this video. The people who do care will care about this additional information I'm going to give you. So if you're still here, awesome. I've got this rule when it comes to producing music that every 4 bars, you want something new to happen, right? Because you want to keep the audience on their toes. So, and these things can be really subtle. So what I've got is, after 4 bars, I just add a clap. Right? Now, you think, well, that's so simple, but look how much this clap adds. Right? I've added a new element. 4 bars later, I add a hi-hat as well. So all I've added is a clap and then this hi-hat that sounds like this. Right? With the clap and the kick, it sounds like this. So listen to this now, when the hi-hat, so we've got the clap going, another 4 bars later, the hi-hat comes in. Right? Something new has happened, which is awesome. It's building, it feels like it's building. A couple of other quick things to mention as well. What I've got here is 2 lead sounds. One is on a low octave, or it's playing at a certain octave. Halfway through the drop, I want it to sound like everything's going up in energy. So I've taken one of these lead sounds and pitched it up 1 octave. So it goes from this to this. Playing the exact same thing but 1 octave up. Now notice how this sounds suddenly a lot higher and it just sounds like more energy. Awesome. It's another little trick I do halfway through. Now, another thing which I find happens in a ton of songs is halfway through the drop, there's usually like a little vocal snippet. So I've just taken Ed Sheeran singing this. Right, and just chucked it in halfway through. Top tip for you, if you throw in a vocal chop like this, make sure you strip away the drums at that moment so there's not too much sitting on top of the vocal. Awesome. That's pretty much the drop done. Now, there's one other thing, which is another little technique I use sometimes. At the end, you're probably wondering what I do for the final 4 bars, because it's like 4, 4, 4, 4. All right, okay, I can't do the maths. But the final 4 bars of the drop, there's a chant here, which sounds cheesy by itself. It's just this. Hey, hey, hey. Right, but in the mix, kind of adds a bit of energy. Awesome. Cheesy, but it works, and you wouldn't have even known it was there unless I pointed it out. Okay, sweet. So now once you've got the drop, you're kind of most of the way there, right? When I say most of the way there, is you can now build up the rest of the song using elements from your drop, okay? So for example, the intro is just the same. It's the kick, it's the bass, which we've already been through, a bit of white noise to signify the intro of the song, and a melody. So the intro is essentially this. But I have added a secondary melody. This melody is this melody here. Let me play it by itself. Okay, now this melody, this is another theory I have for all of you music producers or people who are thinking about getting into it. When you remix a track, you can either take a bit of that track and create a whole new track out of it and you're just using a sample from that song, or you can kind of just build on what the original kind of already is, which is what I've chosen to do in this instance. So this melody is simply from the intro of Ed Sheeran's actual song. So have a quick listen. I'm only playing a second of it because I don't want this video to be taken down for using Ed Sheeran's track. You'll notice that it's that exact same melody. Right, let's go and listen to mine again. And again, I knew what key the track was in, I just painstakingly went through and put all the notes in, right? So the intro sounds like this. Right? That's all pretty straightforward, and then what happens is Ed Sheeran's actual singing comes in. Right? So, as I said, it's being, from the drop, we've built the intro. Same thing with the outro as well, right? So the outro, very similar kind of thing. I'm just taking elements away on the outro. They're all elements I've already ran through. I'm just stripping them away. And of course there was this bit of him singing at the end, which I just kind of kept going, but... See, like, all I've done is I've stripped away the hi-hats. So, intro and outro are done easily off the back of the drop. And to be honest with you, the rest of the track is the same as well. So, like, let's go into the breakdown section here. Only other thing I'll point out, a couple of other cool things for you. It's usually pretty awesome to use these little drum fills when you're going from one section of a song into the other. So when I finish the intro and I go into the breakdown, I use this little drum loop here, which are just pre-made drum loops. Like, it's okay to do this. You can just go and get pre-made samples and stuff. This is from a Kashmir pack. Anyone who's produced before will know about Kashmir samples. And listen to how cool this is. It kind of leads you from one section of the song into the next. Every time you come around, right? Take the drum away. Every time you come around, you know I can't say. That's just a regular track without the kick going. Every time. Then the clap comes in after 4 bars. Every time the sun goes down, I let you take. And then the kick comes back in. I can feel the paradise before my world ends. These are all elements which we've already been through. Now, then we get into like the kind of main bit where Ed Sheeran's song drops, where basically I just strip away the kick and the clap, take away a couple of instruments. So when I bring the kick back in, it feels like the song's kicking off again, right? This is another really important point that I always try and teach people I work with is, with music production, we always feel the need to make sure the song is building and growing and getting more impactful. So we think we need to add and add and add. And this was something that just took me years to figure out, right? With music, it's not a case of adding and adding and adding. It's a case of just knowing when to take stuff away. So when you bring it back, it's got more impact. Notice this section here. Nothing is really being added that's new, but at this point, it feels like the song kicks off just because the kick has been taken away and then brought back in. See how that just felt like it just kicked off? But it didn't. I just took stuff away and brought it back. Awesome. Right, now we've got to this section of the song. That just carries on for a bit. After 4 bars, I add the clap back in, and then we go into the build, into the drop, which is the first thing I started with. The build, don't overcomplicate your builds, honestly. I mean, simplicity is always key. I've already shown you all the elements that go into this track, and there's really not many. I've just got all the volumes right. I've got all the elements sounding the best they possibly can and fitting in with each other. And it sounds like a really big track, even though not much is going on, which kind of goes back to my thing a second ago about not adding and adding and adding. Same thing with a build, okay? Builds are very classic things. You got your snare roll. Right, this was a pre-made snare roll. It's another Kashmir filter, I'm sure, right? Or maybe it's not. I got it off splice.com. So this has just been pre-made. But what I had done is I'd actually chopped it up and given it a slight bit of my own rhythm in here. Right? Okay, cool. So that's going on. And then there's a build here as well as another sound, which is just like a riser, this. Okay, and there's another riser here. So you put those together, you get this kind of sound. 2 risers and a snare roll, which is just this. Which could be put into any build of any song ever. My bass drum, on my bass, sorry, not my bass drum. And then Ed Sheeran singing, right?
Yeah, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after two. It's true.
Okay, now at this point, just before the drop, you kind of want to make it seem like everything's kicking off. Another short drum sample, the one from the intro. Right, that happens just before the drop. And I also got a bit of Ed Sheeran singing here, and this is awesome. I took his vocal and I just pitched it down 12 semitones. Okay, I just pitched it down and I put this effect on it as well called Effectrix, right? Which essentially just kind of makes it sound like you're going, listen. Right? Put all that together and that goes straight into the drop.
Yeah, I was looking for a way. Yeah, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after two. It's true. It's true.
Imagine that kicking off at a festival. Be insane. And that, guys, is pretty much it. Now, for those of you who are still here and still bearing with me, I want to teach you something that's probably actually the most important thing, right? So I'm glad you're still here. The most important thing is this, and this is what I always want to teach people, is when you're making music, you might be listening to this and watching this, never having produced before and thought, Phil, this is all well and good, but how the hell do you even know where to put your drums, where to put your claps? Like, if I sat down in front of the computer and tried to do this for the first time, I wouldn't have a clue where to start. So this is all well and good, you telling me where the kick drum is, where the claps are, all this stuff, but this doesn't help me. Right, so here's how you do it, right? The top DJs and producers on the planet, Martin Garrix, David Guetta, Tiesto, they didn't invent house music, right? Ever notice how a lot of Martin Garrix tracks sound similar? A lot of Marshmello tracks sound similar? But not only that, but have you noticed how a lot of Martin Garrix tracks sound similar to a Tiesto track? Or could potentially be a David Guetta track? These huge builds, these huge drops. Not any one single one of those people said, I'm gonna create some music now that has some ridiculous snare rolls, some huge risers that goes into a huge drop that's got a huge kick and a bass. No, they didn't, these guys didn't come out the womb and go, I know how to do this, right? And this is what confuses a lot of people and frustrates a lot of people, is they think like, how does everyone know how to do this? Well, the fact of the matter is, everybody is inspired by other people's music. Nothing with music is unique. This track that I've made is not unique, right? It's kind of, there's hundreds of other tracks that sound like this. So here lies the answer, right? What you have to learn, and if you decided, if I was working with you on that 12-month mentorship, what I'm teaching you how to do is how to listen to other songs, get inspiration, and understand how you can model the success of other people's tracks to create your own, right? Instead of sitting in front of a blank canvas, which is Ableton or whatever music production software you're using, going, I don't know where to start. We want to get you to a point where you can look at other people's music and go, right, well, where did they start? How long is their track? What's the BPM of their track? What key are they writing their song in? What are the sections of their song? What elements have they got in all these different sections of these songs? So when you sit down in front of the computer, you are modeling the success, not copying, modeling. All tech house music sounds similar. It's modeled on other tech house tracks, right? When you've done it long enough, you don't need to model other people's tracks, you just know. But until you get to that point, you want to be borrowing ideas and taking ideas for inspiration for your own tracks. So, on this note, I want to tell you, I knew that I wanted this track to sound similar to this Melbourne house kind of beat. And a producer who I really like is called Jesse Bloch. I don't actually know how to pronounce his name. But one of his tracks sounds like this, right? Let's go and get it. Right, love this. This is awesome. And I was like, right, I want my track to have a similar vibe, right? And this is going to blow your mind. Listen. Let's go to the actual bit that I want to show you, right? So I'm going to go to here and bring this along. Now have a listen to my track. I'm going to flick back and forth between this track and my track. Notice Our two tracks sound very similar. Nobody would listen to mine and think it really was that similar to this other track, because it's an Ed Sheeran track, different notes, different bass line, but at the same time it's similar. Listen.
I can feel the paradise before nothing you can lose. And tonight, the words to describe is going on.
Right? Hopefully this has just blown your mind. Whenever I make a track, I've always got several reference tracks going on. So I know, well, right, I want my drop to sound a little bit like this track here. I want my drums to sound I want my kick and bass to sound a bit like this track over here. I'm not leaving it down to, some magical inspirational moment of, oh, I just realized that's what I need to do. That's how I need to make my kick and bass sound. I'm going, right, what does the kick and bass sound in this track sound like? Right, their kick is louder than mine. Oh, they've got this thing going on. Ah, they've used white noise here. Instead of me just sitting there getting frustrated, getting irritated, I'm constantly looking at other people's music and going, well, what have they done? Because I can't figure this out, right? So there's a huge thing for you. This is something you really need to understand. So if any of you are brand new to music production and you're like, you didn't know how to do this stuff and all this stuff looks so confusing, the whole point is you just need to learn exactly, you already know what music you like, right? So you just need to know, this is the music I like, and I'm going to now model this music to make music like my own music, okay? You do that long enough, you can begin to build your own style. People will go, well, this person makes music that sounds like this. That's awesome, because I like music like that. So I'm now a fan of that person. I'm now going to go and listen to more of that person's music, because every time they release a track, it sounds this certain way, right? That's how you build a fan base. Wow, I've really gone into it. I wasn't planning on going into it in this much detail, but hopefully, if you're still here and you're that 1% who have stuck around to the end of the video, this has been really, really insightful for you. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you've got any comments, leave them below. If you'd love to work with me on a mentorship where you can jump on live coaching calls with me every single week, go through projects, send me your files, get feedback on it, show you how I would change the track, how I'd improve it, help you grow a fan base, you want to do all that, jump on Instagram, send me the message Mainstage. I'm only looking for 6 people, so perhaps, if you're watching this video in a couple of months, you may be too late, but do it anyway, because I may have some spaces open. That's pretty much everything. I'm going to wrap it up there. See you in tomorrow's video.